Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
Welcome to Republicans Abroad Radio, the voice of Americans overseas, with your host, Cynthia Dillon.
Our guest this morning is Travis Korson. He's the manager of public information for the Center for Security Policy, an organization that specializes in identifying policies, actions, and resource needs that are vital to American security. It was founded in 1988, and Mr. Korson, a graduate of the George Washington University, where he studied international affairs, will tell us about what the center is concentrating on now. And I think it has something to do with the defense spending cuts in the military, right? Good morning, Mr. Korson.
Good morning. Good morning, Cynthia. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be very short, but I was thrown a little bit off my senses this morning because I was cut off in my last interview. So I was about 5 minutes or whatever in limbo. So anyway, I'll just go and ask you directly, since this is a very short segment, tell us a little bit of what you're doing, how long have you been, maybe something personal, and then let's move on to the military defense cuts.
Sure. So I've been at the center for about 2 years now, and I manage communications and marketing for the center, as well as do a lot of work regarding the defense budget policy as a result regards our strategy and kind of what the sequester will do for it. The product that we've come out with recently, we actually came out with this originally in February and just updated it with 2011 defense spending data. They're called our Defense Breakdown State Economic Impact Reports. They can be found online at forthecommondefense.org/reports, and they outline at the city, county, state level, as well as the type of business level, minority-owned, veteran-owned, and also at the congressional district level, how much was spent on these levels in 2011, and what sequestration cuts of 18% will do to the economy of these states. So basically, we're out there, and we believe that a strong defense requires a strong economy, and these reports show that.
And now, what is that the sequestration and the defense cuts? I mean, our first guest was Congressman Palazzo, and I was reading that $800 billion in defense spending cuts are right now, and $500 billion in January. Well, so altogether, you do the math. It's 1.2. I don't know.
That's correct.
Trillions.
So. You've seen a series of cuts since Obama's taken office. You had the Gates efficiencies, which were around $100 billion. You had a new top line introduced by the president, which reduced that further. And that $800 billion is actually projected savings from our pullout in Iraq and Afghanistan over the next 10 years. Introduced last summer was the Budget Control Act. So the Budget Control Act basically had two rounds of cuts. The first round, which was immediately agreed to when the law was passed in July, resulted in a $487 billion cut from defense over the next 10 years. The ball was then passed to a super committee who were responsible for finding $1.2 trillion in additional cuts. They were unfortunately unable to reach agreement, so that resulted in the sequestration mechanism. Basically, the clock was set for that. It's set to take effect January 3rd, 2013, and would result in basically 50-50 cuts between defense and non-defense discretionary spending, which would amount to somewhere between $500 and $600 billion over the next 10 years. What's important to note through all of these negotiations, though, is that even though defense spending represents 20% of our budget, it's taken 50% of the deficit reductions to date. So to those who say defense hasn't paid their fair share, it hasn't been contributing to getting our fiscal house in order, I'd just like to put those numbers at them and kind of, give them that food for thought.
Well, one other mention. Frank Gaffney, who is the founder of your or he's the chief of your public policy center. He wrote an article, and he mentions that there are two fundamental things. It seems this administration, one is losing wars, and the other one is budget cuts. And so those, for the defense. So and he writes about fundamentally transforming the military.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the presidency of Obama to date, another president comes to mind, and that's Jimmy Carter. Both of them, have adopted a philosophy of America second, pretty much, neglecting our military, surrendering sovereignty, which you've seen Obama do through his support for the Law of the Sea Treaty and the New START Treaty as well, and then undermining our allies while emboldening our enemies. And I think he reflects that through the attitude he's taken to the military, which is cutting budgets, supporting combat rules of engagement that put our troops at risk. I think he wants to see America decline to a regional power and give up its status as the world superpower.
Yeah, and even what's ironical is that even Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has called the sequestration cuts devastating, and the Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, has also, called it catastrophic. So obviously, there's something that this president is not listening to anybody.
Yes, and it's not just the president; it's also the Senate. The House of Representatives has forwarded several proposals to avert sequestration, either correct it through measures such as the Paul Ryan budget, or at least provide opportunities to find solutions, provide basically stopgap measures, extensions, such as the Down Payment to Protect National Security Act, which was introduced by Representative Buck McKeon, and now has somewhere over north of 60 co-sponsors, I believe, or the Sequestration Reconciliation Act, also introduced by Paul Ryan, which both seek to, through cost-saving measures, spread out over the next few years, avert sequestration for 1 year to give our lawmakers more time to take care of these issues. Unfortunately, Senator Reid has not allowed either of these measures to the floor for consideration, even though a very similar piece of legislation to the Down Payment to Protect National Security Act was introduced by Senator Kyle and has the sponsorships of several co-sponsorships of several senators. Both Senator Reid and President Obama refused to speak of sequestration measures, corrections, unless it includes revenue increases. So you're almost to a point where they're playing politics with our military and our nation's national security.
Unbelievable. One other question. Does Obama dislike the military so much? And would China and Russia, how will they react to all of this?
I don't know what the president's personal attitudes are regarding the military. A few of his initiatives have related to benefits for the veterans, so I don't think there's any personal dislike for our soldiers. I think it stems more from a philosophy that wants to relegate America to a regional power, that wants to allow other nations, space. As far as China and Russia is concerned, I think the Asia pivot is going to be undermined by these cuts as well. If sequestration goes into effect, we will have the smallest Navy since 1915 and the smallest tactical Air Force in the history of the Air Force. So to say that we are bolstering our Navy and our Air Force in order to use those two branches of our military service to compete with the Chinese is undermined by these sequestration cuts, which the White House doesn't seem to have much interest in counteracting.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. We have to have you here for a longer segment, but it was very fascinating, and thank you so much for the information. You're listening to Republicans Abroad Radio on WSRadio.com, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.